The galactic station orbiting Carrot bustled with activity, its wide halls filled with beings from every corner of the cosmos. It was the Festival of Unity, an event celebrating interspecies cooperation. For Zira, a young Zephy, it was her first time stepping off her peaceful homeworld. Her wide, shimmering eyes darted from one stall to another, taking in the sights, sounds, and smells of alien cultures. The Zephy were a fragile, peaceful species, born on a world devoid of predators or natural disasters. They valued harmony above all. Their lives centered around art, music, and community. But here, in the chaos of the station, Zira felt small and overwhelmed. Her attention was drawn to a corner of the plaza where a crowd had gathered. Peeking through the legs of taller species, she caught sight of the source of the commotion. A large man with a thick white beard and a red suit stood on a raised platform. He was laughing heartily, his deep voice booming over the chatter. "Ho ho ho! Who's next to share their wish?" he called, holding a sack of brightly colored packages. The figure was unmistakably human, but Zira had never seen one like him before. Humans, she had been told, were dangerous. They came from Earth, a death world. A planet teeming with predators, hostile environments, and constant danger. Her tutors had warned her of their resilience and unpredictability, their ability to adapt and survive against impossible odds. And yet, this human seemed anything but threatening. He handed a small, glowing orb to a timid insectoid child, who chirped excitedly and scurried off. Zira hesitated, then stepped closer. "Curious, little one, aren't you?" a soft voice said. Zira turned to see an older Zephy, her pale skin shimmering under the station's artificial light. "That's Nicholas, or as the humans call him, Santa Claus. He's part of the cultural exchange program." "What is he doing?" Zira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sharing his people's holiday traditions. Humans celebrate something called Christmas, where they give gifts and spread goodwill. It's their way of fostering kindness, even in the harshest of circumstances." Zira frowned. "But he's a human. Isn't he dangerous?" The elder smiled. "Danger and kindness are not always opposites. Watch and learn." Zira stepped closer, her curiosity outweighing her fear. As she approached, Santa, or Nicholas, noticed her. His eyes crinkled with warmth, and he knelt to meet her gaze. "Well, hello there," he said, his voice rich and comforting. "What's your name, little one?" "Zira," she replied hesitantly. "Well, Zira, do you have a wish? Something you'd like for Christmas?" Zira blinked. "I don't understand. Why would you give me something for no reason?" Nicholas chuckled. "That's the magic of Christmas. It's not about what you give or receive. It's about the joy it brings." Before she could respond, a loud crash echoed through the plaza. A towering cargo container had tipped over, scattering goods and nearly crushing a group of traders. The crowd gasped in panic, but Nicholas sprang into action. "Stay here," he said firmly to Zira. She watched in awe as he strode toward the chaos. While others scrambled to help, Nicholas reached the container first. He planted his boots firmly on the ground, bent his knees, and, with a deep grunt, lifted the massive object as if it weighed nothing. The traders scrambled out from underneath, offering hurried thanks. Nicholas set the container down gently, brushing off his hands as if it were a minor inconvenience. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Zira felt a chill run through her. How could someone so jolly, so seemingly harmless, possess such overwhelming strength? She had heard stories of human resilience, of their ability to survive environments that would kill most species. But seeing it firsthand was something else entirely. Nicholas returned to his spot, his jovial demeanor unchanged. "No harm done, folks. Now, where were we?" he said, addressing the crowd. Zira stared at him, her mind racing. She couldn't reconcile the two sides of this human, the cheerful gift-giver and the being of raw power. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Zira lingered nearby, watching Nicholas from a distance. She was no longer just curious. She was determined to understand him, to learn how someone from a death world could embody such kindness and strength in equal measure. As the station lights dimmed for the evening cycle, Zira whispered to herself, "Who are you? Santa Claus?" It was a question that would set her on a journey of discovery. One that would change her life and her understanding of the galaxy forever. The next day, Zira found herself drawn back to the bustling plaza, her mind still replaying the events from the day before. Santa Claus, Nicholas, had returned to his stall, surrounded by eager children of all species. Though she kept her distance, she couldn't stop watching him. Eventually, the crowd began to thin, and Nicholas noticed her. He smiled warmly and motioned her over. Zira hesitated but then stepped closer, her curiosity outweighing her unease. "Well, if it isn't my curious little friend from yesterday," Nicholas said, his voice as jovial as ever. "What brings you back, Zira?" She shifted nervously. I wanted to ask you something. About Earth." Nicholas's smile widened. "Ah, Earth. Now there's a place worth talking about. Pull up a seat." She perched on a nearby bench as Nicholas began his tale. "Earth is what some species call a death world," he explained, leaning back and stroking his beard. "It's a wild, unpredictable planet. Our weather can be deadly: hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards. Our wildlife, some of it can kill you just by looking at you funny. And don't get me started on the diseases." Zira's eyes widened. "Then how do humans survive there?" Nicholas chuckled. "That's the thing, kiddo. We don't just survive, we thrive. Earth taught us to be resourceful, to adapt to anything life throws at us. That's why humans can endure so much, even out here in the stars." Zira tilted her head. "But you're not like that. You're kind and gentle. You're not dangerous." Nicholas raised an eyebrow, his expression turning serious for a moment. "Being from a death world doesn't mean we're monsters. Sure, we're tough when we need to be, but surviving Earth also taught us the value of compassion. On a planet like mine, where life is so fragile, you learn to protect what matters." His words made Zira pause. She thought about the stories she had heard of humans in the Galactic Union. Stories of their incredible resilience, their willingness to take risks that no other species would dare. Yet here was Nicholas, spreading joy instead of fear. "Why do you dress like this and give gifts?" she finally asked. Nicholas laughed. "Well, that's an Earth tradition. On my planet, we have a holiday called Christmas. It's a time for giving, for showing love and kindness. My job here is to share that spirit with the galaxy." "But isn't it hard for you?" Zira pressed. "Living away from your dangerous world?" Nicholas leaned forward, his eyes twinkling. "Hard? Maybe. But you know what? It's worth it. The galaxy needs a little joy, especially from us humans. We've seen the worst life can throw at us, so we choose to share the best we have instead." As Nicholas spoke, Zira felt her perspective begin to shift. Humans weren't just strong, they were strong because they cared. And Nicholas, this strange man from a terrifying world, was proof of that. She left the plaza that day with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. There was more to humans than she had ever imagined. Zira's fascination with Nicholas only grew after their conversation. She spent the next few days observing him from the edges of the plaza, trying to reconcile what she had learned with what she felt. Humans were Deathworlders, yes, but Nicholas didn't fit the image she had in her mind. His strength and kindness seemed like two opposing forces in one being. One afternoon, when the crowds had thinned, Zira gathered her courage and approached him again. Nicholas was sitting on a sturdy chair, his red suit slightly rumpled, sipping a steaming drink from a metal flask. He noticed her approach and grinned. "Ah, Zira, back again, are we? Come, sit." He gestured to a small stool nearby. Zira sat down, fidgeting with the hem of her tunic. "Nicholas, can I ask you something serious?" "Of course," he said, setting his flask down. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated, then blurted out, "Aren't you afraid? Living away from Earth, surrounded by species who see you as dangerous." Nicholas leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "Afraid? That's a good question. The answer is, not really. Humans are used to fear, Zira. It's part of life on a death world. But we learn to face it, to push through it. Otherwise, we wouldn't survive. But here, you don't need to survive like that, Zira said. You could live peacefully, without danger. Nicholas nodded. True. But fear isn't just about survival. It's about what you do with it. Take this job, for instance. Do you think it's easy being a human ambassador? Walking into places where people assume the worst about you. Zira shook her head. No, I guess not. Nicholas smiled gently. Exactly. But I do it anyway because I believe it's worth it. The galaxy needs to see that humans aren't just creatures of violence and chaos. We can be more than that. We can bring joy, hope, and connection. Zira mulled over his words, but her curiosity still burned. But what about your strength? Yesterday, when you lifted that container, it was like nothing I've ever seen. How do you control that? Nicholas chuckled. Strength is a funny thing. It's not just about muscles or power, it's about knowing when to use it. On Earth, strength kept us alive. Out here, it lets us protect and help others. But it takes discipline, Zira. Knowing when not to act is just as important as knowing when to step in. His words resonated with her. She had always thought of strength as something to fear, something dangerous. But Nicholas showed her another side, strength as a tool for kindness, for making the galaxy a better place. As the day wore on, Zira felt her perception shift even further. Nicholas wasn't just a human or a deathworlder. He was a paradox, a living testament to the balance between power and compassion. When she left the plaza that evening, her heart was lighter, and her mind was clearer. She was beginning to understand the true meaning of what Nicholas had called the magic of Christmas. It wasn't about the gifts or the festivities, it was about the courage to be kind, even in a universe that could be so harsh. The station's Festival of Unity drew to a close, and the plaza was quieter than it had been in days. Decorations shimmered faintly under dimmed lights, their colors muted but still warm. Zira walked toward Nicholas's stall one last time, her heart heavy with thoughts she couldn't quite articulate. Nicholas was packing up the remnants of his display. Ornaments, small gift boxes, and a tattered banner that read, "Merry Christmas." Despite the calm, he worked with his usual energy, humming a cheerful tune. When he spotted Zira, he paused and grinned. Well, look who it is. My favorite little philosopher. Come to see me off. Zira smiled faintly. I guess so. I wanted to say thank you. For what? Nicholas asked, setting down a box and sitting on the edge of his display table. For everything, Zira said, her voice quieter now. For showing me that humans aren't what I thought they were. For showing me that strength isn't just about power. And for helping me understand why you do what you do. Nicholas's smile softened. Ah, so the magic of Christmas finally reached you. Eh? Zira nodded but hesitated. There's still something I don't understand, though. Why? Why risk so much just to bring kindness to a galaxy that might never accept it? Nicholas leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. Because it matters, Zira. Kindness is what holds the universe together. Sure, humans can be strong. But what's the point of strength if it doesn't help anyone? On Earth, we learned that survival is only the first step. Thriving means building connections, helping each other, and making life better for those around you. Zira frowned. But isn't that hard? What if people take advantage of your kindness? Nicholas chuckled. Oh, they do sometimes. But kindness isn't about what you get in return. It's about what you give. You see, Zira, strength and kindness aren't opposites. They're two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. Not if you want to make a real difference. Zira thought about his words, the weight of them settling in her chest. She looked up at him, her shimmering eyes wide. Do you think I could be like that someday? Strong and kind? Nicholas's grin returned, bright and full of warmth. I don't think, Zira, I know. You've got the heart for it. And that's where it all starts. For a moment, they sat in silence, the hum of the station filling the air around them. Then Nicholas reached into his sack and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden ornament. He held it out to her. What's this? She asked, taking it gingerly. Just a little something to remember me by, he said. A piece of earth crafted by human hands. Keep it close and remember what we talked about. Zira held the ornament tightly, her heart swelling with gratitude. As Nicholas finished packing and prepared to leave, Zira stood and watched him go. He waved over his shoulder, his voice booming one last, "Ho ho ho," and as he disappeared into the crowd, Zira felt a spark of something new inside her. Hope. The galaxy was vast and often harsh, but Nicholas had shown her a different way to live within it. Strength and kindness, hand in hand. A lesson she would carry with her for the rest of her life. She looked down at the ornament in her hand and whispered, "Merry Christmas, Nicholas,